of Zion Memorial Chapel and Cox and Graziano Funeral Homes. Jennifer is here to discuss a sensitive subject we all need to talk and think about. Here now is Jennifer Graziano and Time to Talk.
Good afternoon, Westchester. It's 12 noon on Wednesday, and that means it's time to talk with me, Jen Graziano. I'm a licensed funeral director who oversees my family's funeral homes, Cox and Graziano of both Mamaroneck and Greenwich, and the Zion Memorial Chapel of Westchester. Every Wednesday, I come to you discussing important topics and sensitive matters that all of us need to pause and reflect upon at some point, and through this show, I hope to provide a platform to do so. Good afternoon again. If you're joining us on 1460 VOX, we will take your questions, comments, and calls to 914-636-0110. Hello, Gerald, and everyone in the control room. And welcome or welcome back, Facebook Live viewers. Second show of the day, and as always, Tim Judge, the man behind the phone camera. We are talking today about money matters, and no one ever wants to talk about money. It's sometimes can be as uncomfortable as talking about death, but that's why we're here, because we talk about that which is uncomfortable. My guest is Raymond Krause, a financial advisor with Morgan Stanley, based out of the Purchase office, but helps people all over Westchester and the area. And we're talking about wealth management, financial planning, and the importance of having a plan. Welcome, Ray.
Hi, Jennifer.
Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
You are also featured in the current issue of Coming of Age, where you offer some financial tips as well, and people can learn more about you. The magazine's available on my website, coxandgraziano.com, and issue.com. We'll talk about that in a bit. But just tell us a bit about yourself and your passion for discussing these really difficult matters.
Thank you, yes. So I've been in the industry now for 25 years and dealing with clients, and one of the big subjects that always comes up is the passing of wealth from one generation to the next. Mm-hmm. And it's always a bit of a challenge working with existing clients and getting them thinking about their estate and their legacy, and it's a big part of what we do.
It's so, you wonder what you want to leave behind or how you want to be remembered or what you want to, you've worked your whole life, you've accumulated wealth and assets, and without the proper planning, there's not an automatic passage to your descendants, to your children, to your grandchildren. I mean, there's this overreaching arm of the government that can kind of come in and unravel what you've taken a lifetime to build. So proper planning is key. And as we go on, we'll discuss a lot of topics, but also how to have this conversation with your children as to what, in fact, they will expect. I mean, when you have that conversation, it's uncomfortable on so many levels. Number one, you indicate we're talking about a time where a person plans to not be here anymore. No one wants to think about that. You have issues such as multiple children and possible feuds and who believes they're entitled to what and how much. I'm sure your office has turned into a bit of a Jerry Springer show at some point.
It can, absolutely. I've seen it all.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. So just tell us a bit again, how you decided to go into wealth management, financial planning as a profession. I mean, are you by nature a very methodical, planned, organized guy?
I always have been, yes. Even from high school, I remember wanting to get into the financial industry and have been interested in helping people save money and making the right investment decisions, and it's just something that's inside me. And the planning aspect of it, yes, people think I plan a little too much, but that's just my personality.
I get accused of that as well.
Yes, so but it really comes in handy in what I do. And to your point about clients talking to children, it's a constant issue, and we try to take advantage of opportunities when things arise to get them thinking about that.
That's true.
Because
and
people
thinking
try to
while they're
avoid
here.
it at all costs.
Yes, absolutely. But again, having the conversation while you're here to have it
Yes.
is so important. When you think of a doctor, you treat a whole person, a whole patient. So if they have one ailment afflicting them, it likely will have an effect on another part of the body, or another ailment can spring up. Kind of similar in what you do. You have to really understand your client as a whole, but explain to our listeners and viewers why that is, why you can't properly plan without knowing the whole client situation.
Yes, it's very important, and it all goes into making the proper recommendations, which include things like the client's time horizon and how long this money will be invested and what its use is for. Everyone's situation is different, but I do have, affluent clients that really are never going to spend all the money that they have, and they need to invest it according to maybe the next generation's needs. And so the more that we know about client's family and their situation, we can give the best advice.
Tell us some of the extreme situations that you've witnessed, where lack of planning has become very problematic, or some of the issues that successors face when proper planning was not in fact done.
Absolutely. So, there are instances where, the children, the beneficiaries of these estates, are not speaking, are not on a good footing together. So that, it's more important than ever that, parents plan for that and have very clear instructions, whether it's through trusts or through a will, in order to kind of sidestep any issues that might arise. The worst case scenario I've had happen is, clients dying intestate without a will, and malfunctioning beneficiaries try to have at it with attorneys, and they end up going through almost as much money as left in the estate.
Yeah, probate is a lengthy process. It's a tiring process, and again, what you spend going through the process almost negates the asset you're fighting
Absolutely.
for.
And in this day and age, with the specialization of elder care and planning attorneys, it's unfathomable to me that people
still don't have it right. I mean,
right.
the resources are there and quite abundant. So, I think one of the messages that we have to hammer home today is that it's never too late. That people who are watching and listening, who have long put this off, saying, I'm in my 70s, I'm in my late 70s, I haven't contacted anybody, I don't have a plan, it's too late for me. How do we kind of dispel that myth and let people realize it's never too late? And also, there's no minimum amount of assets. Anything that you have worked to build, you can in fact preserve.
That's right. And it's really just getting, in our situation, it's getting clients to think outside of their own situation, because
or outside of the immediacy of where you are, that you're living and you're healthy and you're existing right now.
That's right. And it's hard. No one wants to really, think about the time when they're not going to be here, but it's so important to think outside of your own existence, especially if things are good, if everyone's healthy and in a good state of mind, that they can sit down with attorneys and draw up a good plan. It doesn't matter if they're 50 or they're 80. It's never too late, and you want to make sure that it gets done before, maybe you're not fully in capacity, right?
It's true. The time, that's the irony, the time to make long-term legal plans, healthcare plans, financial plans, perhaps even funeral plans, is when you're okay.
That's right.
And when you seem least likely to need the plan. But that's when you're of sound mind and body, you have all your faculties about you.
And it's a constant journey, right? So if you start out, at our age when you have young children, it's a lot easier to kind of change the plan as you go to accommodate needs, as opposed to doing nothing and then going into it when you're 80 in panic mode. And I've seen it happen, and it's unfortunate.
And the other thing too is, nothing is set in stone. As life situations evolve, birth, death, marriage, divorce, these plans need to be altered. I always say wills need to be revisited. Healthcare directives should be revisited. You can do something today that might not be applicable in 5 years. So again, dust the cobwebs off, your financial statements. Go through your portfolio. Be an active participant in your assets and what you have, and take inventory. So I hope people will heed the message today. So, Ray, financial advisors, there are many, kind of like attorneys. Funeral directors, not so much, and thank God, because knowing the ones that I do, I'm glad it's a limited pool.
Yes.
But how does your market analysis and your asset management approach, how would you say that it differs? Why come to Ray?
Right. Well, that's a good question, and I think everyone's trying to differentiate themselves a bit. And I try to keep it simple. I try to focus on the client's time frame and think of money as an asset that you will need in a specific period of time. So we kind of separate into retirement assets, into assets you might need in the next 10 to 15 years, and then assets that you want to keep liquid in case you need something in an emergency. And having that kind of time frame helps make the decisions after that, right? Because then we can address how much risk to take in those portfolios. And, you know, they change over time depending on market conditions and the research that we do. And then just to get back to the same point about planning, you know, trying to draw in a client's attorney and accountant,
Right.
so that the three of us can sit around the table and have these discussions with the client as the fourth person to really help get them in the right place.
I want to talk about something because we're talking about, again, making plans when you're healthy, but allowing for different parts along the journey, different stops along the way. Let's talk a little bit about planning from a financial perspective for your long-term health care needs. Some people think that Medicare is just this blanket ticket from the government that's just going to take care of everything. Such is not the case. You know, they have the 100-day coverage, and then afterwards people who need extended care for rehab facilities or nursing or acute care facilities. Where does the funding come from? How do you advise your clients to factor in any type of long-term care needs?
Right. Well, there's many ways to fund long-term care, and some people self-insure. You know, they're affluent enough where they have the assets, and we have what we call a drawdown plan, which is a plan in advance as to which assets to liquidate first in order to pay for care, whether it's at a nursing home or advanced care facility, and a lot of times, you know, the person who is primarily in charge of the financial health of a couple may be the one to be ill and incapacitated. So having a plan in advance is very helpful. But for people who maybe are not as affluent, long-term care insurance is a very good way to help absorb some of that cost.
Okay.
There's also riders that can be attached to traditional life insurance,
Okay.
whereas you can use the death benefit while you're alive to pay for long-term care. So there's a few different ways to fund that, but once again, it's important just to have that discussion and make sure that we know what we're talking about, because not everyone can fall back on Medicaid and you know, Medicare as well.
And even with Medicaid, I mean, the application process and the requirements and the spend down and the transfer of assets that have to happen within this 8-year window, you know, the difference of 8 years is more sizable than seemingly 8 years. You know,
Correct.
A person's health between 70 and 78 can be so different, so that people who weren't farsighted perhaps and didn't predict the future, it could take one fall or something so minor to change the course of health. And at that point, it's this rush to get assets out of your name that might not exactly work. So being foresighted and thinking about, you know, your finances and the overall picture of your financial health, and thinking what should happen should I become ill. Again, all good reasons to have a trusted advisor in your network.
Absolutely.
So Ray, in the media and social vernacular, we hear the term holistic and financial planning used together. Holistic is a hot button word nowadays anyway, in terms of mindfulness and wellness, but how does it coincide with your field?
Like I said, you know, it's really as far as kind of crafting an individual plan for each client, right?
Okay.
So there's no cookie cutter approach here, and that's, I think, what also can differentiate, you know, what I do to some other advisors. So, you know, we really do an intensive interview process and try to get to know the client's wants and needs and desires, and try to figure out how we can make a lot of this happen, and work with their other trusted advisors, their attorney and their accountant, and typically that, you know, holistic approach of kind of, you know, putting everything together. Because the worst thing to happen is, you know, we go through an entire plan and find out that, well, you know, my accountant or attorney had something else in mind, right? So let's get involved from the beginning.
Right.
You know, I've become contact with lots of those professionals in the county and really around the country, and it's to me, it's been the best approach.
It certainly is, you know, treating as a team, and again, treating
Absolutely.
the whole client and understanding all the different facets of a person's portfolio. What are other important considerations that you provide for your clients, right? What are other things that perhaps we haven't discussed yet that they should be thinking of and planning ahead?
Well, part of the process is really also educating people, right? So many people, I think, very fearful of the financial planning process because it's not something you do every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you do kind of like buying a car every 5-10 years, that kind of thing. So, but by educating people as to the process and what the risks are, what the rewards are, and what it means to think long term, and spending time on this process, it's so important. And we keep at it. We are always constantly trying to extract more information to provide better advice. And the happiest clients are the ones that provide that information. Absolutely.
Do you find yourself sitting around a table often with children and beneficiaries and successors? And do you find that there's a lot of contention in the room and things that need to be ironed out, and then or perhaps that lack of information or lack of communication between family causes a lot of financial tension?
It goes both ways. I've sat around kitchen tables with elderly parents and middle-aged children, and everything seems to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And then when mom and dad pass, all hell breaks loose, right? So, and then I've sat with families that are very thoughtful and caring about the parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I seem to think that beneficiaries that have those thoughts in mind make the best beneficiaries because they want to see that mom and dad are taken care of. And eventually the parents have done a good job in divvying up assets and making it very clear what their intentions are, and it leaves nothing
Right.
Untouched.
Communicating your intentions is so important.
Absolutely.
How do you advise the client who perhaps has a child or multiple children that they feel can't be trusted with the assets? How do you devise a plan that obviously the parent wants to protect said child, but they're aware that they're lacking in terms of financial responsibility? How do you advise them? What vehicles do you use so that they can pass down their wealth but protect it as well?
So that's the nice thing about having worked with attorneys, that I would send the client back to their estate attorney,
Okay.
and try to even talk to the attorney, explain what the client has in mind, and this is the situation, and they can usually craft a document.
Such as a trust?
Correct.
Okay.
A trust, some sort of trust that we could fund with assets that we would invest for the client, title it in the name of this trust, and upon their passing, typically there could be a corporate trustee that would look out for the assets of this beneficiary that they're trying to protect and maybe not give all the money to right away.
Exactly. Ray, on average, do you find that your clients are working longer? Are people kind of being forced to working longer because it's a high cost of living in the area? Or are people maybe perhaps not adequately financially prepared for retirement and that causes them to work longer?
It depends. I think it depends on the assets, right? So, the affluent client is really enjoying their retirement. And I find that they are as busy, if not more busy, in their retirement than they were when they were working 9 to 5. And then there's folks that, for whatever reason, whether the planning wasn't as great during their early years, they find themselves without sufficient assets and they're forced to work, a part-time job here or there.
Right.
But then there are others that really, their life is surrounded by their career. So they don't.
So they can't let go.
Well, they don't want to let go.
Right.
And they can let go,
Right.
but they choose not to.
Right.
And those folks that don't have those hobbies waiting in the wings, whether it's grandchildren or golf or travel, they stay employed, and sometimes they're happier too.
That's very true. Again, it's probably a peace of mind too, knowing that you have prepared for retirement. But if you enjoy what you do, why stop doing it? Probably makes you live longer, arguably. That
I think it does.
You get up, you have a purpose, you keep your mind sharp, you socialize. There's so many benefits from
right.
that. So how does your market analysis approach put your clients in a better position to succeed? What is it that you're doing actively every day to keep people in the best position they can be in?
So we use a combination of sources, right? So we rely on Morgan Stanley and their expertise to guide us. Not so much day to day, but just in general, how much risk to take in specific portfolios. So if you have a retirement plan and you're 10 years away from retirement, you can pretty much ride out any sort of market situation for the most part. But if you're within 3 to 5 years roughly, then we need to be careful, and we need to sometimes scale back on the amount of risk that's in
Right.
the portfolio, so that when it comes time for you to retire, you're not retiring in the year that a recession hits and the financial markets are down for a year or so. So it's just a constant being vigilant and, like I said, using different sources, Morgan Stanley and outside Morgan Stanley, to give us that expertise.
So, of all the wealth management firms though out there, why is it that you're with Morgan Stanley? I mean, have you always been with them?
I haven't. I was with a previous firm for about 20 years, and I joined Morgan Stanley about 4 years ago.
Okay.
And after the financial crisis, I realized that I wanted to be at a firm that was really at the forefront of what I call modern wealth management, right, which is incorporating all the newest technology so that the advisor has as much tools at their fingertips to help clients achieve their goals. Right?
The best information you can have, you have at your fingertips.
That's right. And wealth management is really, I think, the biggest division at Morgan Stanley. And I wanted to make sure I was at a firm that, puts clients first and does the right thing and, works hard to provide education to their advisors and, keeps my continuing education up on my certification as a, chartered, planning counselor, and they've really filled that role, which has been great.
Again, a very client-centered approach.
Absolutely.
And we hope the message that people are taking away, if you're watching or listening, is, again, it's not too late. If you haven't made these plans, you can certainly start. And there's no minimum amount of asset or minimum net worth that you need to create a proper financial plan. When do you, how does your approach vary, Ray, if you have a client in their 50s versus 60s or 70s? I mean, again, is it just in terms of minimizing the risk as we go up each decade, or, where would you begin with a 50-year-old client?
So, we'd find out, what they're looking to achieve over the next 20 years. When do they want to retire? Do they want to retire?
Right.
Do they have children? Do they have children with special needs? Do they have parents that they take care of?
Right, which is another important part of the equation.
Where do they want to retire? We were talking about that before the show started, right? So depending on where you want to end up, sometimes if you want to stay in the tri-state area, you're going to need more money available to live than if you were, say, to move to other parts of the country.
Right.
So when we talk about the holistic approach, it's all that kind of stuff that goes into play. And we keep track of it, we keep a plan, and the plan is a document that constantly changes over the life of the client. And to your point, there's no bad time to start, right? Typically I see people who are newly married, who maybe have children, and then life takes us on our road, which could be divorce or happily married or whatever the case may be. So to your point, I don't think it's ever a bad time to do that. And depending on your assets, that's irrelevant also. Whether you're worth $100 million or $100,000, it really doesn't matter.
So again, we all say money's kind of a sensitive topic. Not everybody really enjoys talking about it, but why do you love what you do? What do you like best about it? What's the good part of a money discussion?
Well, it's funny, having now some time in the industry, I'm starting to see clients that I started working with in their 50s who are now retiring.
Mm-hmm.
And, watching them enjoy their grandchildren and having the summer house in Maine, or being able to pay for a grandchild's college tuition, right? All these kinds of things, are empowering and makes for a better, experience. So
enjoying the fruits of your labor.
That's
you're
right.
Watching your clients get exactly what they had hoped for with you.
And to our topic, those that have sat down and spent time with their planning attorney and their tax advisor, and their Morgan Stanley financial advisor, to make sure that everything is set so that they really have some peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it in their faces when they come to visit, that they feel like things have been taken care of, and it's a lot easier to tweak the plan than it is to start up. So that gives me satisfaction knowing that we've done a good job.
Well, I'm sure. So Ray, as our time is drawing to a close, can you give some final tips, some general tips? I know, you're not here to give out specific financial information as a disclaimer, but what is your general overall message to the audience today?
Well, I would say use your professionals that you work with to your advantage, right? So if you have a trusted tax advisor, start with that person. Ask for a referral for an attorney, or ask for a referral for a financial advisor. Or if you're using a financial advisor, ask them for a referral to an attorney or an accountant. And then make an appointment, sit down, and spend the time and get it done. And you'll find that, the passing from one generation to the next, is a lot easier than you may think it is before you start the process.
Right. Some people might just give up and say, you know what, there's nothing I can do.
That's right. And there's always something you can do.
Tax man's going to get me, but yes, there's always something you can do. You're very involved in the community. You lecture. Again, you have an article in Coming of Age. Is there anything coming up that you're doing? I know September we're doing something together.
That's right. We'll be at the Wainwright House in September. Kind of a panel discussion talking about these things.
With an elder law attorney.
That's exactly right.
And a lawyer, funeral director, financial advisor. I don't know. This sounds like a really grim night, but I promise it'll be fun. I promise. Probably have to have wine or something.
I don't know. We'll keep it.
That's a lot to swallow.
We'll keep it going. We'll keep it.
But how can people get in touch with you, Ray? Your phone number, website?
Yes, we'll post the website to our Facebook account. I have a telephone number, 914-225-7153. It's Morgan Stanley in Purchase, New York.
That's 914-225-7153. Raymond Krause, an advisor with Morgan Stanley. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You know your subject. And again, contact him with any questions, 914-225-7153. And this is Jen Graziano thanking you for taking the time to listen as we took the time to talk. Have a great day, Westchester. Bye-bye.